Today's topic, I'm going to try and keep it simple. I know we can get into the complexity and advanced mediumship, but today's topic is interpreting symbols and signs, the art of learning spirit language with accuracy and efficiency. So first of all, I know this is 101, but basically, what is the difference between a sign and a symbol? I know that a lot of people morph that into one, that terminology, but a sign is generally something that you'll see reoccurring day after day or a few times in a day, and you'll say, wait on, that's a sign. And it could be a bird that goes past, or it could be, a certain song that's on the radio, or it could be a sign that somebody comes up to you 3 times in a day with a fluorescent green shirt, and that's what your dad wore as part of his work shirt. So a sign is much, much easier for someone to start out with, to accept. So if you're trying to explain life after death to somebody who has absolutely no idea, and their mind has not even grasped that, and their mind especially is in grief, you cannot start coming out with the complexities of symbols. It's too much and they'll miss it. So often, even if you're non-spiritual, not of a religious background, atheist, everybody, I believe, in all parts of the globe say that is a sign. That is a sign. Even the financial world in high corporate areas will say that's a sign. We need to buy that stock, or we need to buy that excess. So signs are easily accessible. They're around us each and every day. And signs are much more accessible and accepted by most of the population, because it's just an easy concept that everybody will grasp. So one of the first things when people pass away, they're not looking for symbols. They're looking for signs. They're looking for signs or signposts that that person has arrived okay in the spirit world and they're being taken care of. And it's often those signs are things that people are familiar with. So if, for instance, you've lost your mother and she absolutely loved tulips, a really good example is that. And your mother passed away last week. You're walking along and out of nowhere, a kid knocks a bucket of tulips out the front of a florist and it rolls your way. You are going to be taking a photo and texting all your friends and saying, look, I've got a sign from Mum that she's okay. She's arrived. So the signs are, if you're trying to introduce people to life after death, life after life, survival after death, consciousness, start slow. Introduce the signs. And the spirit world can manipulate that much more successfully than what they can when we get into the symbol side of things. So signs are something that it's a mini language. I wouldn't call it a full language. It's a tiny little language that you've got with the spirit world, of, like a yes and a no, and they're there. It's simple, and people look for that common sign for someone specific that's passed. Or it could be something's going on in your life and you want to buy a house, and then all of a sudden that house comes up for sale that you liked 2 years ago. It's a sign. If you go into symbols are much different, more complex, harder to interpret. Most people get frustrated and angry when it comes to symbols because they're confusing. They're not clear. You sort of can interpret it in a whole different manner. And then a symbol you share with all your friends and family, and everybody else throws a spin on it. Okay? And it becomes a mess. So symbols are not for people, and do not promote too much symbols for people that are not interested in developing any of their intuitive faculties. It is too much for their head. Keep to the signs. If you want to develop further than waiting for the tulip bucket to roll down your way or the house to become up for sale down the road, then start to use your intuition to develop the symbols. Okay? So symbols are something that can be built in what I call a library catalog. Okay, I'm a big believer in the library catalog. I verbalize that a lot, even in my live events every Friday night. If I get something new, I'll even verbalize to the audience, well, I've got to slot that in my library catalog. And from doing that thousands of times, you end up with a slot system. You know, the old computer systems where you check the cards in and out and the slots. It's like that. And you've got to remember that the spirit world is many thousands of years old. Thousands of years the spirit world have been communicating through ancient languages of symbols. Look at the Egyptians, for instance. How do we know that a lot of that wasn't symbols that were interpreted through mediumistic abilities, whether it was from people from earth plane, astral, spirit world, or from other intergalactic regions? But either way, as we go into the symbols, we need to keep an open mind in how that can be given to us. So with our symbols, we don't need to sit back passively. So you may decide to sit back passively and let the spirit world bestow upon you a couple of symbols. You could be waiting a year, you could be waiting 2 years to develop a basic language doing that way. Or you can do what I do and be a bit proactive. You know, mediumship is 2-way between you and the spirit world, or 3-way if it involves a third party. So, you know, for me, I hear a lot of names, but I will see, and the main names that I see are Mike or Michael, which is Mickey Mouse. I will see Mickey Mouse. Or if I can't hear Jim or James clearly, they will correct it by showing me Jiminy Cricket. It's definitely Jim and not James. Okay? So for you, you've got to think, what if there is a guide or a helper that's working and developing with you and knows nothing about Disney? Okay? No one ever thinks about what the person is on the other side that's trying to project that through. So can you imagine if you have an ancient guide that's been floating around, coming to the earth plane, guiding and helping, and you're expecting all this complicated symbol language from somebody who just didn't have that in their vocabulary when they're on earth? So, you know, you have to start out very simple. So I always say to people, you want a yes and a no symbol. You want to keep it very simple. So if you start out, you pick things that are rare, pick things that are very rare. Otherwise, you'll end up with World War III in the spirit world, because they project things to you and you always ruin it by saying it's a coincidence. Okay? So often when I'll be reading someone in an audience, even I'll say, hey, I've got this symbol here. And they'll say, that was my symbol for Dad, but he never ever showed that to me. Well, he's showing it to me now. He's been showing it to you, but you just haven't seen it. You've expected complexity. Okay? So evidence can be just not for you getting a symbol. It can be, you can step this further. You don't have to be a genius at this. You might have a friend that's lost a loved one, and you say to them, right, build up a symbol or have a sign or a symbol for your mum and don't tell anybody, and get them to come to you, get their loved one to come to you. If you're too scared to tell them what that symbol is because you don't want to be wrong, just give them a general sentence and throw it in. Throw the symbol in that silly sentence that you're saying, and they'll say, that was my mum's symbol. Okay? So symbols and signs can be used for you, or if you want to help other people, because of All mediumship to its advanced level is signs and symbols and, a combination of other senses. So you start out simply by saying, right, one relative, not 10. Don't go bringing in Uncle Jack and Auntie Maureen and Professor John. Okay, one symbol, one person. You pick something rare. So the first thing is pick one relative if you want to start out developing this, or if you want clear communication. Pick one relative at a time, or friend, or a guide on the other side that you wish to have communication with. Pick them first, visualize them. Secondly, you need to pick something that's extremely rare, not something that's common. Because if they go to all the trouble of showing this to you and you say, oh, that was just a coincidence, they won't bother. They won't come back. Okay? So if I was a relative on the other side and I was putting in a lot of energy in a symbol and I ran around and built up the power and I projected it and gave it to you, and then you tell me that it's a coincidence, I'll say I'm not going to bother with this person because I put a lot of effort in. Get me? Okay? So you got to pick something's rare. So an example of this, you might pick a Tasmanian tiger to be a yes. So you may say, okay, I want you to show me the yes symbol in the next 3 weeks. I'm going to pick the Tasmanian tiger. It's extinct. And I want you to show that to me in some form. And it could come to you by turning the TV over and there it is, a documentary on that, or a kid's drawing, or you're walking through a shopping centre and a little fluff toy falls off and it's a Tasmanian tiger. Okay? Then once you've got that and they show that to you in some form, you got to be looking out for it. You say to them, I got that toy that fell off the shelf from the Tasmanian tiger. Now we've got our yes symbol. And then what you do is you say, we're going to develop a no symbol. So we'll pick the Tasmanian devil. That's quite rare. So show me the Tasmanian devil in the next 3 weeks. Give them 3 weeks. They're hopeless at time on the other side. Okay? And if it's rare, they've got to find it. They've got to find their victims out there as well to bring that symbol to you. Okay? They've got to find open-minded people. And it could be that you're at a party and a guy's completely drunk and he starts telling a joke about the Tasmanian devil. And everyone thinks he's telling this joke when in fact it's your loved ones impressing his mind to give you that message, to keep an open mind. Okay? And then once that comes to you, within 6 weeks, you've got a yes and a no from one relative, one only. Okay, they'll use the power of other relatives in the spirit world, but that's your main communicator. So once they've shown that to you outside of yourself, you then have your yes and your no symbols, and then you can start asking questions. Should I buy that property? Do you think it's a good idea? Of course, I'm here on free will. You can only guide me with that, but is that a good decision for me and my family, or should my son go to a college across the East Coast or across the West Coast? Okay, if they should go to the East Coast, show me the yes symbol and wait a couple of weeks and it will show itself to you. You then build up these symbols, the yes and no symbols for each and every relative that you want to communicate with, and you have yourself a little chart. And I know you're going to laugh at this and everyone thinks the spirit world remembers everything. They don't. Put your little chart on the fridge. Grandpa Jack, you're the Tasmanian tiger and you're the Tasmanian devil. Then we go down to Grandma Jean and we're going to have here the polar bear, and then we're going to have something else. And put it on your fridge so the spirit relatives can come and go, that's me. Right, now I've got that one and I've got that one. Because they can get so confused helping Grandpa Jack with his Tasmanian devil and his Tasmanian tiger and helping him out for 3 weeks, they forget their own symbols. So you get yourself a little chart and you put it on the fridge. No one needs to know what it is, okay? Put their names on it, their little faces on it, and your yes and your no symbols. And while you're in having your little dreams and sleeping at night, they can come and check out their own chart, and it's 24/7. Okay? So you have a very basic system that you have for each relative and a yes and a no symbol. If you want to then build this even further, we then start to build the language up with the spirit team. You may get to a point where you don't care who it comes from. Okay, you just need the information to interpret. So people need their symbols for certain relatives to let them know that they're around. You get to a certain point in your development where you just accept that your relatives are around all the time and they're guiding you, not all the time, but most of the time. If you need help, they gather around. Does it really matter if Grandpa Jack or Grandma Jean's help? It doesn't matter as long as there's a group of people that are helping out. Okay, so you get to that certain point where you stop dividing everybody up. But when people are in grief or people want to hear from their relatives, you have to divide them up in individual identities. Okay. So, Wendy, do you want me to open the floor up for any questions or?
Yeah, it might be a good time to work by questions, or people might want to share their own experience of symbols and signs.
Or
We
does it make
haven't.
sense?
I think perhaps if you, we haven't really gone into. No, okay. Let's move into questions because you're going to have to finish at 8 o'clock. You told me that.
So what is it you wanted to go? We can go further into developing the language then, Wendy.
Maybe another 10 minutes on developing the language.
Yeah, yeah. So in terms of hearing and seeing and feeling, so at the moment, the symbols that I've just given you are outside of yourself. They're on TV, they're coming out of there, they're coming out of there, they're coming out of there, and they're basic. So for you, if you want your yes and no symbols to come to you mentally, if you're willing to develop that even further, then you go to bed of a night and you visualize your own symbols that you have for each of the relatives. Okay? Now, you might want a Tasmanian tiger with a pink top hat. A pink top hat. Okay? So you visualize something that's got something extra on it so you know it's not your subconscious mind. Okay? There's a difference here. Or you may say to them, give me my Tasmanian tiger and my Tasmanian devil, but add something to it that could not have been my subconscious mind. Then you know it's not your imagination. Does that make sense? Okay. So if you're laying in bed and you say, right, give me that symbol, a Tasmanian tiger or Tasmanian devil, but add something to it. When I wake up early in the morning in the next few weeks, add something to it that I know that it's not me in my own mind making it up. And they may add some dots to it. They may add some shoes on it. They may put the tiger on a skateboard. And you'll just know that that can't be me. That must be them. So we want them to add something to it to eliminate you thinking it's your subconscious mind. Okay? So over time, you have to develop it with this yes and no symbol system. And then what happens is you start building a language or shorthand. You start building your shorthand. Okay? So if you then use, for instance, a boat, then get them to pick a boat that you have never ever seen. This is the key to you developing your own signs and symbols. You have to get them to give you stuff that you're not familiar with. If you are familiar with something, you are going to argue that that's part of your subconscious mind, and you could be wishing for that symbol that much that it is your subconscious mind. Okay, so it's important that they add, especially in a hologram fashion, a layer on top of that. Okay, now this is the key. This is where everything gets complicated. We want them to add a layer to your symbol to prove that it's not your subconscious mind. Beyond doubt. But you are not at this stage of your development going to read further into that extra layer. So you say, show me a Tasmanian tiger. Then next week, normally when you're waking up, they'll give it to you, or when you're going to sleep. They'll show you the Tasmanian tiger in pink socks. In pink socks, right? I don't want you to panic that you have breast cancer because the tiger's in pink socks and pink ribbon day is breast cancer day. Okay? You're not to read into the second layer. They are your rules with the spirit world, to add a layer, to remove your subconscious mind at this stage in your development. This is why people give up, because they read too much into it. Only you get to that when you become advanced. Don't do it in the beginning. So get them to show the tiger, they add their layer to it, but do not read into the layer at this stage of your development. Don't do it. It's too early. As you start to develop your symbols and you become better at this over time, you have different symbols with different parts of your language over time, then you can ask them to add their layers that include a meaning. That include a meaning. So when you're doing mediumship, for instance, with a large audience, I would say I have a Tasmanian tiger here and it's got needles all out of it, and I want you to go for acupuncture in Tasmania. Yes, I'm going to Tasmania next week, and I was thinking of getting an acupuncture appointment. Okay? You can do that further on when you add the layers that are in there. A lot of this is lost, and a lot of faith is lost in this because everybody's reading into everything. When in fact, the first and most dangerous thing that you need to eliminate is your subconscious mind. And that first layer in your development removes that subconscious mind. Okay? So when you're developing your signs and symbols, you need a layer from the spirit world that you have no idea what it is, and you're not to interpret it on top of your symbol, which in this instance is the pink socks on the Tasmanian tiger. Don't worry about the pink socks. You got your Tasmanian tiger. You've woken up in the morning. He's got pink socks. Wow. I would never have thought of that. My team's working with me. Okay. And start to develop bit by bit. Once you're confident enough that I've now trained my mind that I'm not receiving subconscious thoughts, that actually is coming from the spirit world, and I'm confident of that, then ask them to add layers on your symbols that give you further information. The Tasmanian tiger now has needles coming out of him, so therefore the person needs to get acupuncture done in Tasmania. Then you develop it further, okay, and further. And then that sign and that symbol can have other additional layers placed on top of it. Okay, a picture tells 1,000 words, but it can become very confusing when you can't interpret that basic picture, and especially if you don't have faith in your own interpretation and your own development of that. Okay, so we're layering it with the spirit world based on our own level of development. Okay, and I think this is where a lot of this goes wrong over time. I think this is why a lot of signs and symbols are lost, because it becomes too complicated with too many relatives, too many layers, and you have not got faith in your own subconscious mind and what is coming from the spirit world. And that is the number one key. You can get to a certain point over years of development where one picture is given to you with 5 layers on it, and you're able to tell a very, very, very specific story from that one picture. And that is you having patience in your development over time. We work with one layer, we remove the subconscious mind. That one layer means nothing. Now we're going to add 6 months later another layer that will mean something. Okay? And you may say, I'm asking for help for someone medically. They need help, and they may show you a tiger with pink socks, and you think maybe that person needs to go and get a breast screen done when you're further with your development. Not alarm the person, because of course we've got to be careful with medical, but it may be that you see the pink socks. That's breast screen. So therefore, I'll just encourage that person, won't harm, to go and get that checked. Okay? So the layers are there for a reason of different layers of intelligence. So you start out with something simple each and every time, and you build off that. And you have to require a lot of patience in this. And a lot of people give up. It's a bit like the gym. You go for 6 weeks and then you throw it in because it all gets too hard. Building signs and symbols is very much the same when it comes to the spirit world. And your spirit team will slot this out in categories. So they'll slot out a whole range of things. They'll pull the tiger out, they'll pull a pair of pink socks out, and they'll say, Louise knows pink socks means breast screen. Louise knows that means that. And they pull it all out of the library catalogue and they layer it and layer it and layer it on top of your symbol. And that's over that development time. And they'll only put that in the library catalogue when you've both validated it from both sides, because a lot of energy goes into this. Does that make sense to everyone and you as well, Wendy?
Yes, Louise. Look, one of the things that comes up a lot is when people keep seeing something and they don't know what it means. Like, for example, numbers, 333. And people keep saying it and they say, why are they keeping showing me 333? Can you tell the spirit world that you want that to mean something, or do you have to try?
Absolutely. And you can do
only
that.
Show me 333 when you want something, or
yeah. And let's make it even more clever, Wendy. Why don't you show me 3, but in a different form that I'm not aware of? Okay, let's stand back here. I keep seeing 333 or threes, and I think it's you, Mum, or I think it's my guide, but give it to me in another capacity that my subconscious mind's not aware of. And guess what? You could wake up tomorrow morning and you see kids' noughts and crosses with 3 crosses. Or you could wake up tomorrow morning and see it in Roman numerals. Okay?
So why is people will often say, I don't know why they're giving it to me.
Because they haven't built a language, they haven't taken control. So when we started this session, we took control. We said to the spirit world, the Tasmanian tiger means yes. The Tasmanian devil means no. So I keep seeing 33333 around everywhere, right? Then we have to say, okay, something's going on here. Now let's start to build an intelligent structure on top of that. We can't continually see threes. There's a lot of threes around everywhere. So it could be a coincidence. So numbers like a lot of people see 1111. Okay, it's a very common thing, which means open gateways, which is great, but numbers are very limited because there's only 10 numerics, 1 to 9 and then zeros. We have to move beyond that. So once we see the 333 or 444, we then go, wow, that is fantastic and that's great. But we need to now build onto that meaning further. Okay? So we don't know what it means.
Can you say, for example, okay, Spirit, I want you to give me a number. I want the number for no to be 444.
Absolutely. But repetitive is dangerous because we see a lot of repetitive numbers everywhere and our mind can focus on that. Our mind can focus on that. So people say they see 1111. Well, that's easy to see because you never see 2222 on a clock and you never see 3333 on a clock. So this is where, how hard is it for them to give 444? I don't know anywhere where you could see 444. It's very hard to reproduce continuously and very hard from the spirit world. So you may only get a message once every 3 months because it's so hard to get those 4 4s or 3 4s in line. Does that make sense, Wendy?
Yeah.
So we have to make it easier. We have to make it easier for them. So yes, if you see 444 and you say, show me that, but their ability to continually reproduce that is difficult. It's not easy. We need to make we need to develop something with them to make it easier for both of us and give it a little bit more depth. Does that make sense, Wendy?
Well, I think perhaps if we get people to talk about their own examples, that might be.
And numbers are great, absolutely great.
Well,
However,
and what another one that they come up with all the time is coins. That certain people claim that the number, the date on the coin,
absolutely,
has
absolutely,
significance.
absolutely,
And you
absolutely,
can say, "Get me a coin with such and such a number to mean such and
absolutely.
such."
It does, and that's very true, Wendy. And I've experienced that. I had a trailer unloading some stuff, and it was my sister's birthday. And a German, Angela, you were there when that happened. Remember that day? So my sister, it was her birthday, and a German Deutschmark coin manifested itself on the trailer. Now you don't even have Deutschmark anymore, didn't it, Angela? And it was her year date of birth right there on the trailer. Okay. I don't expect them to reproduce that continuously. Okay, but that's a lot of effort, Wendy. We're expecting a lot for a coin with a certain amount of numbers and dates on it. That's crossing over into physical mediumship. You're expecting a lot in that sense. So it does happen. Yes, people do get it. But do we want rare situations? That's the question I've got for you, Wendy. Do you want to put up with a rare coin that only turns up once every few months, or do you want a full-blown language?
Yeah, well, look, lot of my one of my medium friends uses traffic lights when she wants, when she wants a yes. It's like green lights. Show me a green light. When it's a no, it's a red light. That's something simple.
It is, but are you saying showing it mentally or physically?
Well, mentally, a mental symbol.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely perfect. However, we have to get pictures. This is going to get over a period of time. Your subconscious mind is going to want that, and then wake up in the morning and project that. We're talking about it for everyday people. So we want them to give us different interpretations of those traffic lights each time. Have you got me, Wendy?
Let's hear from the other people.
Yeah.
Dan?
Well, I wanted to, first of all, thank you very much, Louise. This is a wonderful, wonderful discussion. Are you excluding, when you're talking about the perceiving of symbols, are you excluding those seen in dreams? Or are you limiting to physical daytime
No,
experience?
everything, whether you visualize it when you're waking up or in the dream or in a different situation, anywhere you can see it physically outside of yourself as well as internally, mentally. But I'm still a strong believer we have to be able to separate what's in our expected subconscious mind of wanting something
Right.
as opposed to the spirit projecting what we need with an additional layer.
Right. What about synchronicities that occur? I go through periods of time, for example, of maybe a week, where I'll be reading or writing something, and same word will be heard on the radio at the same moment.
Yeah, yeah,
I
absolutely.
haven't attributed any particular significance to that, but I've noticed that these things happen in cycles or in periods.
Yeah.
How does that sort of thing relate to what you were teaching us today?
Absolutely. And sometimes that can be mediumistically. So you write that name down, okay, and you just
Mm.
sit and you wait and see what happens. So sometimes things can be given to you that you can't change. So I was writing down a name that was coming up on everything in a movie, TV show. I was telling Angela about it for a few weeks. Someone booked in for a reading. I went, wow, this is not a coincidence. And then a friend lost their son a couple of weeks later, and that was his name. So it
Oh,
was just my spirit team saying we're preparing for that person's son to make transition, but we can't tell you. But when it does happen, you'll look back and say, we were in control of that. So sometimes the signs and symbols are there to actually just prepare us later on to look back at things. So it's an intelligence that we can move beyond the basic stuff and try and have a chart and try and write it all down as well so that you're clear on that. But definitely they're able to give it to us in many different forms. Many different forms.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Sherry?
Mute. Okay. Hi, Louise, and thank you
Hey,
very much.
Sherry.
Hi. My son was 22 when he passed, and his birthday was October 22nd. And since he's passed, either 222 or 2222, I'll pick up my phone inadvertently. It'll be 222.
Yeah, yeah.
It will just, I'll be in the city and in the back of a cab, and I'll get the impulse to look across the street, and I'm on 222 West End or something. And so obviously that's a sign.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But then when you say add on to that, how would you add on to those numbers? You would ask for more clarification or for...
Yeah, yeah. Well, you can add on layers of that. So it may be a good example is you might say, okay, give me something more. And he may give you noughts and crosses that are 2 up there, 2 down here. So you might have a circle up there. You might wake up just one morning and have 2 crosses at the top, a circle, 2 crosses here and a circle, and the third row's got 2 crosses. So it's 222. A flash in your mind of something.
Okay,
Get
so
them to develop it.
another symbol or a way of showing me the
Yeah,
same.
yeah. And when it happens, it's wonderful. It's wonderful because you go,
Okay.
wow, there's no way I would ever have thought of noughts and crosses or Roman numerals or any. There's all different ways they can do it. We just got to think outside the box. So, you know, that even my spirit team are just giving to me with balloons that sometimes I'll pop a balloon and it could be you'll see like, you know, you're 222 or 2 lots of balloons. So there might have been 3 lots of balloons in the room and 2 pop. And you've got your 2 and your 2 and your 2. So look out for things like that they can do physically. Not just numbers. It's sequence of things like 2 peanuts on the floor, then 2 over there, and then 2 peanuts over there.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Regina?
Hi, Wendy. Louise, thank you very much.
Hello, Regina.
Yeah, you're awesome. I've been working with symbols and signs for years, and my guides are really, really good at showing me and keeping me with a heads up. I had one the other day that did stump me, and then they started throwing all sorts of layers. Well, if you can't figure it this way, maybe if we throw a barbecue into the mix, okay, now we got to put an ocean. Wendy, you should know which one I'm talking about. But anyway, all sorts of layers are being tossed onto the initial image that I had never seen before.
Yeah.
And it was like, let's see how fast she can read this.
Yeah,
is what it felt.
yeah.
But it was coming so fast that afterwards, of course, I was all of a sudden going into self-doubt afterwards. But it was like 2 days afterwards, and then all of a sudden my brain is, trying to mentally put all that together. So I've been asking that spirit to please verify, so that yes or no, use my normal yeses and nos. And I'm getting a not yet. Not yet.
And you know why that is though, Regina? Because it's all timing. And one big thing that you need to do, and a lot of people don't do this, if you really want to be successful at this, this is the cracker. This is the biggest piece of information you'll have today. What I do is when I receive information, so I wake up in the morning and I have no recollection. There's notes all over the floor. And I get up and stomp over about 10 different pieces of paper, right, where things have just been written, thrown down, then I go back to sleep, and then I write down. Layers on top of layers of things. When you receive something, if you want to be really good at this and in clear communication, you have to be honest with yourself really deeply. And Angela's on this call, and Angela and I work together, and we've worked together for 20 years in IT, and we've worked together alongside on other stuff as well. And we'll talk during the day. And I'll be honest, and I'll say to Angela, because we've worked together for 20 years, hey, I received this, this, and this, and this, and this. However, One of those layers must be my subconscious mind, because I was talking to you about that yesterday. Do you remember that, Angel? That's how we do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you really want to be investigative and you want to be very specific on everything, some of those layers can be your subconscious mind.
Right.
And you have to eliminate. So when the spirit world comes into your dream, the spirit world will come into your dream. Okay? People think the spirit world just turn up in a dream and it's all fantastic. It's not true. Not true at all. 98% of our dreams are nonsense. It's clearing the unconscious disk drive, ready for us to wake up in the morning to receive more and open thoughts. So a lot of our dreams are not true, like nothing valid. It's nonsense clearing. And then once in the middle of that dream and nonsense clearing of the disk, just think of it like a video or a DVD clearing. It will clear the disk and then someone pops in with something out of nowhere, which makes absolutely no sense.
Right.
In the middle of all your junk and nonsense.
Right.
But there they are in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Then you wake up and you go, well, there was Mum there standing next to a barbecue, and then there was the neighbour across the road fighting over the garden hose. Good example, right?
Mm-hmm.
You write it all down. Then you say to yourself, well, yesterday the neighbour was fighting with me over the garden hose, so that's my subconscious mind that I was clearing out. So that wasn't Mum. Mum doesn't want you to fight with a neighbour over the garden hose.
Right.
That was what you were talking about yesterday. And as that was all clearing, Mum just came in the middle of that.
Mm-hmm.
Another layer. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And to be very accurate in these signs and symbols, you have to be honest with yourself.
Yes.
You have to be so honest with yourself by saying, I was only talking about that yesterday. So therefore, it's not evidence. It's nothing else. Remove layer 1, 2, 3, and 4. And what's left over can't be my subconscious mind and therefore must be truth. You are not allowed, and I know this sounds, this is the German side of me coming out. You are not allowed to accept any evidence that could have been part of your subconscious mind through wishful thinking. And it does happen.
Yes.
There's no way I can stand up in front of an audience Friday night after Friday night after Friday night with some wishful thinking in there for people and subconscious thoughts. If you want clear communication, you have to be honest with yourself and go, right, what was that? What was that was just in my mind?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I had an instance only a few weeks ago. I was eating a peanut bar and I've started to cough from peanut bars just before I walked out to an audience. I went out there, demonstrated, and then suddenly I saw this peanut bar and I went, wait on, the person's not allergic to peanuts. That was me only half an hour ago at the back, coughing on that peanut bar. Remove that layer. Remove that layer. So it involves you becoming very, very honest. The subconscious mind's very powerful and you need to be able to train it. And so for you, Regina, I wouldn't take that as 100%. I would write everything down and then I would say that could have been part of my subconscious mind. That could have been part of my subconscious mind and that. And what's left over is the communication.
Excellent. Excellent.
Because they're overlaying the subconscious mind continuously until you can train it so good and so specific to remove, then you have not got the capacity to say at that point in time that is 100% full communication of spirit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
perfect. Great.
I know that's in depth, and Wendy, you probably didn't expect that today, but it's no use developing this if you're on an airy-fairy path.
Right.
And you think everything's coming from the spirit world when in fact it's not. We are human. We live on earth. We have a subconscious mind that we need to train.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. That was wonderfully explained too.
Yeah.
Louise, we've only got 8 minutes left. I know you've got to leave at 8 on the top of the hour, so we'll just get through as many questions as we can. Lloyd?
Yeah, Wendy, this is in response to your wondering about if you just see a number that you don't know what it's all about. There was, I've had several of these kind of incidences. I just started thinking of the number 48 for a couple of days, and I was going, well, what's that about? And then I was about to make a right turn at San Pablo and 48th Avenue. I didn't know it was 48th. I wasn't looking up. And this whole drama unfolded in front of me that had clear messages for something that was an issue for me. And I don't want to get into the details, but I looked up.
Fantastic.
It was 48th Street.
Yeah. Brilliant. Good on you, Lloyd, for even seeing that and interpreting that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's brilliant and that's good. But imagine when you get to a point of your development where you don't even have to go outside your door. You're waking up in the morning, you can see that.
When that issue starts coming up, I start seeing 48 again. I go, okay,
Good on you.
Got to deal with this.
Yep. And you may see it in other capacities. Now we've all had this chat today. It could come to you in a different capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So look out for that. Because remember, 4 is half of 8. So you could be seeing a half of something and a full, a 4 and an 8.
Mm-hmm.
Keep an open mind.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Ellen?
Yeah, this has been interesting and also confusing to me, Louise. So I'm just going to be honest about that. When I see symbols, well, two things come up. I see symbols and they tend to have different meaning depending upon the context in which they appear. So, and that's in readings primarily.
Yep.
But then, and who I'm reading for.
Yep. Okay.
But then the other piece of this that I'm questioning from what you're saying, I'm finding that spirit uses my subconscious material to communicate as well.
Absolutely.
And so I don't want to eliminate that, because what I find is that as I'm doing my readings, I'm getting signs and symbols that are recognitions from my lived experience.
Experience. Yes.
That, and so I'm a little confused about what you're saying about.
Good question, Ellen. Very good question. So when the spirit world pulls out our experience, it's what we call claircognizance, clear knowing. So you didn't see that in a symbol. It was just bubbled up inside of you, Ellen, correct? So your experience isn't a symbol. When they bring up your experience, they're using claircognizance, clear knowing. Boom, they've hit you with it. And then you bring up your experience. That's not your subconscious mind. That was a real experience. That was a conscious experience. So bringing up your experiences is not signs and symbols. Bringing up your experience is clear knowing, a download from the other side, completely different. And that can only come in a more advanced mediumship or in readings, as you're talking about. So our subconscious mind and what you experience, what you've actually experienced, is not your subconscious mind. It's real. You experienced it. It was conscious. Does that make sense?
Yes, and my sense is of this. I'm going to have to sit with all of this for a minute.
Yeah, of course, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I have to watch this again, because my sense of this, I get mostly, I'm sentient mostly when I do my readings. I don't, I might get an image of something.
Yep.
But what I do is I offer that to the person I'm reading for.
Yep.
Just as it appears, not necessarily trying to interpret it.
And get them to interpret it, because it could be their mum's favorite tulip or whatever it is.
That's what it
absolutely
usually is.
But Ellen, you've got someone to interpret that for you. You're reading for someone and they can interpret that for you. What we're talking about here is the general person that's got nobody to interpret that.
Got it.
You've got your sitter, like I have with an audience, to say, hey, I'm seeing the Tasmanian tiger and I'm seeing needles with acupuncture. Someone's going to Tasmania for perhaps acupuncture. Yeah, that's me. I'm there next week and I've been thinking about getting an acupuncture appointment. You and I have got people to interpret and validate. This is a very good question. We'll finish with that. Validation. We've got someone to validate our signs and symbols. But for the average Joe Blow, there's no one to validate it outside themselves. So they have to validate that by eliminating their subconscious mind and working it out themselves because they don't have mediums to do it for them. Does that make sense, Ellen? Okay, so that's the difference. You're getting clear cognitive information, clear knowing from your experiences. You're seeing your symbols and your signs. You're giving it to the sitter, to the client, and they're saying, yes, that means everything to me. That's the tulip. That means that's their symbol and sign. You've got the beauty of somebody validating it. But with your own stuff, Ellen, it's not easy. It's harder when you're doing your own stuff because the only
It is, but I just want to say this. My people come in with songs. All people have a song, so I know who's there. But this was
absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. But mediums even have problems, and Regina will validate that. Regina's got a bit of a problem at the moment. It's not for a sitter, it's herself, because we've got to validate our own stuff, right? So if I, as a medium, want to get information and I've got no sitter sitting across from me, then I've got to remove out all my dreams and everything else, and I've got to get to the truth of what's not subconscious for my message, okay? Whereas when you're doing a reading or an audience or whatever it is, they can validate that it means something to them. So it's a very good question, Ellen. Are you the person, what side of the fence are you sitting on? Are you interpreting signs and symbols for yourself or for other people, or is somebody else going to validate it for you? And they're all different levels of that. That's a whole nother topic. But today, I'm just trying to give you all a straightforward approach that you can work through in the development. You've got to start somewhere. And I don't care how advanced you are and how good you are. Each and every day I work on my signs and symbols and try and add layers on top of layers on top of layers, because Ellen, I might not have the experience. I may not have experienced that particular situation. So I've got to be able to quickly give a scenario outside of the download, outside of the clear cognites by the symbols that are there. Okay, because we've got different levels of people on this call here today. We've got people that want just signs and symbols to sort their own problems out, or we've got people that want to help other people by validating those signs and symbols that they're receiving from the spirit world, which vary from receiving from guides to relatives to friends to animals even. That's another ball game. Animal vocabulary is another ball game. So, but Wendy, I hope that today's giving everyone some insight.
Well, I think we'll spend another hour talking about it and giving practical examples. Yeah. Gary, did you want to say something, Gary?
I was just sending Louise some balloons for a wonderful presentation.
Yeah, we'll take
Louise.
away, and I always say, if this was easy, everybody would be doing it. So right. If you're walking away from here not thinking about your own development and it's too easy, then you're not going to put the effort in. You won't develop it. You won't think about it. You won't change your way that you work with spirit. And all I'm doing today is putting a rock in each and every one of your shoes, and I hope it hurts for the next few days, because it will take away that feeling of just it being easy and trying to train your subconscious mind, which will give you excellent communication with those on the other side. Most definitely. And don't get too lax with it all.
One thing I do want to add, I absolutely, and I've said this to you before, love Louise's direct approach. Your mind does not wander when you're listening to her. You're very focused on what she's saying. So I really appreciate your style of presenting. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Gary. And I love chatting to this group. I will be back if you guys will have me back.